Hi everyone, I'm Katie, artist, business coach and founder of Step Up Create, and today I'd like to talk about why you should bother to find your stories. So this is not just because I have a course on this coming up that's free and it's going to be amazing, it's also because this is the thing that I have seen people find the most challenging. So many students come into my class and they will be like, oh no, I don't want to do personal stories because I don't have any good stories. Yes, you do. We all have good stories, and good stories are not classified by how big they are in terms of, the day that I climbed Mount Everest or whatever else. They could be something really small. How I made coffee for someone, and it doesn't need to be someone famous. So you do have stories, and it's important to find them. For me, there are three main reasons why it's important to find your stories. The first one is very practical. It's career development. So if you have a clear idea of how you got to where you got to, this is also known as your why, you'll be able to explain that to other people. Now, this might be explaining it to other people in a recruitment situation, so whether that's explaining in an interview, on an application form, in your LinkedIn summary, on your CV, all of those are channels for your story. This is important for you to have very clear, what is my story? And this is the same situation as you have if you are running your own business. What is your story? And thinking about how did you get to launching this business or initiative or whatever you're doing. Even if you are outside of recruitment, let's say you're an established manager, leader, you still need to be developing your personal brand. And one of the important ways of doing this, one of the ways of getting people to empathize with you and getting people to be inspired by you, is letting them know about your personal story. How did you get to where you are now? Now, obviously, we're not going to include all of the information on this. So this is kind of like a film. Let's imagine that during your entire life, you've been videoing everything that's happened. So you have this massive amount of footage on what happened in your life. You're not just going to give someone that unedited footage and go, yeah, this is what's happened in my life. You are going to edit that footage. And when you tell your story, you develop your purposeful story about your why, that's exactly what you're doing. You're editing that footage. But in order to edit your footage, you need to really think about it. You need to reflect on, how did that all fit together? Now, the interesting thing about life stories is that they don't tend to make much sense when you're in the middle of it, but they do make sense looking back. You can connect the dots between the different things that happened and how they inspired you moving forward, but only if you reflect on it. So you really need to focus on, what was the inciting incident that started leading me towards this path that I'm on? And once you've identified that, you can then build the story around that and identify other key moments where you refined your choice to become an investment banker or your choice to become a coach or whatever else you're doing. So that's the first thing. For careers, stories are hugely important, and you will, a little bit like on Netflix, I'm sorry to mention Netflix again, but it's a great source of stories, where you see a character who has a complex story arc that goes over the whole of the season, and then they have a sort of smaller story arc that is what happens in that episode itself, and then other things that happen with interactions with different characters. You want to create something like that. So your overall story arc is all about how you got where you are today, but you're also looking at very specific stories. So really nailing it down to specific incidents. Of course, there'll be loads more than you're actually using in this. So you have to be very specific, very focused on, okay, I'm going to have this in my film. I'm not going to have this in my film. That doesn't mean that the rest of it was irrelevant. It is just making it clearer for your audience. So point number one, why you should find your stories, because it's really good for your career and your personal brand and your own development. Point number two is that stories are great for inspiring others. Now, this is probably the thing that we think most about stories. We think about maybe starting a presentation with a story, like all TED Talks. We think about telling stories in private situations, maybe at weddings or whatever else. This ability to connect with people, to identify those key stories. We think about maybe leadership. So when you're a leader, you probably don't want to just always tell people what to do. You want to inspire them, and inspiring them might involve telling stories around the things that you want them to take away. Of course, we never know if they take away that exact thing that you've designed it for, but having some clear stories that you can share about your past. I mean, a lot of leaders will share things about when they were starting out, when they were young in the companies, and some things that happened to them and how they overcame them in order to make their teams feel a little bit more comfortable with some of the situations that they might be going through. So being able to inspire others with stories is something that's hugely powerful. So that's another reason why to find your stories. And this one, you might have a story that you develop for a specific presentation, but you also might have a load of stories sort of in your back pocket that you use from time to time with your teams. So this doesn't mean that you've got a specific situation you're working on. You're just thinking about, okay, what are some of the things that I want to communicate to my teams that sometimes fall flat and that I might want to develop stories for? And by develop stories, I mean find your true stories and work on them. So point number 3, and we've talked about this before, is to know yourself better. This isn't a communication thing. This is a leadership thing and a self-knowledge thing. So if we go back over our past, we think about what are the key stories, what are the things that have happened to me in my life that are the most important things. This is revolutionary. And this can really change the way that you think about yourself and the way that you lead and the way that you interact with other people. It's there. You've got it in you. It's just we don't make time for reflection. And if you're interested in this, I've got another video on this, storytelling for reflection. And I've also got a course called Lead Your Creative Life, which is coaching through storytelling. So you can find out more about that on my website. I don't want to go into more detail here, but these are the key reasons for me why you would want to find your stories and start telling more stories. To supercharge your career, to inspire others, and to know yourself better. Some pretty good reasons to start storytelling, which is fun in itself. So join me for the free course. It's coming up really soon, starting on the 5th of October, and I look forward to seeing you there. Bye.